couldn't scale the thing. I couldn't grow it. I just felt trapped. Reddit is one of the most slept on marketing channels for like even bigger brands, but also founders.
Do you see any downsides to starting your own company?
Oh, yes. We want to get a goat farm. We both love goats. I don't know why. People are honest. People will tear you down. People will see through bullshit. It's not always about just winning new clients. That is the end goal. But sometimes people are seeking clarity. That in itself has a intangible value.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Ship It and Sip It. It is 2025, which means we have another season of amazing founders to bring to you this year. And the first one, I'm very excited to have Jordan Moloney on the show. I don't know, can I call you like the current king of Reddit marketing?
I think so. Yeah, that's fine by me.
Awesome. Yeah. And I say that because if you don't know about Jordan, he has been dropping amazing spreadsheets and ideas about Reddit marketing on the indie hacker community, the Build in Public community on X. If you're not a part of that community, what are you doing? You should join. But Jordan, thank you so much. First of all, the reason I reached out to you is because you made one of these amazing lead lists for our team here at Clipwing. So I thought, that's awesome. I should talk to this guy and reached out. So first question is always, what have you shipped recently that folks should check out?
Thank you. I love the intro, and I appreciate the title of Reddit King. What have I shipped recently? My new Reddit agency. Not officially launched yet, but I've been taking on clients and doing these public lead lists, and people seem to love them. So you can find them on their Twitter.
Yeah, and your handle is at Dev Malone, I believe.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But today we're going to talk a little bit about your background, how you got to what you're doing now as a fractional head of growth. And if you want to learn more straight away about Jordan, you can head over to his website, foundersowl.com, and learn more about his offer. But in terms of today's show, we're going to talk about Jordan leaving his role at a big company after 10 plus years. You were there for a while in tech talk, how you refined your offer as a fractional head of growth, what channels you're helping founders with specifically, probably going to focus a bit on Reddit, and then some predictions for 2025. What do you think's going to happen? So you were at HSBC for 10 plus years, according to your LinkedIn. So I guess you started that quite young. What was it like to go into such a big company, and what was your mindset throughout that time? Were you like just happy to have a regular paycheck? Were you always like 1 foot out the door, ready to launch something of your own?
Yeah, so I was there a long time. It was my first, I call it big job in the city in London. So I started when I was just turned 18, which was basically nearly 13 years ago now. And it's typical, like when I first started out, I didn't really think about any of those things. I was just like, I want money to be able to, live. But I never went to uni, I never went to college or anything like that. Didn't really kind of grow up in a household that encouraged those things. It's not a sob story. Like, it's fine. I went straight into work when I was like 17. So then I suppose 2 or 3 years in, I was thinking, okay, I want to get promoted. I want to like move up in the ranks. I want to be a director, all that good stuff. And I did move up in the ranks, sideways, upwards, whatever you want to call it. And was very much, I appreciate my time at HSBC because it taught me a load of stuff that I'm using literally right now. I suppose the change probably come 3 years ago, maybe, when they was doing some downsizing, and I got offered redundancy to leave my job. And I took it. I didn't want to find another job. I was like, okay, I need a little break. I've been doing this for like 10 years. And thought about what I wanted to do. I was like, I do want to kind of do my own thing. I don't want to make money for anyone else anymore, but I did go back into the job market and worked at another firm, much smaller, but still a large one. And then it really kind of hit home. I wasn't particularly happy. I didn't feel connected to that kind of work. And it was only last July when again the redundancy happened again, and I was able to really go full time into this thing. And yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I found a really good write up you did at the end of last year on X, where you sort of broke down in a thread month by month your journey last year, starting, I guess, in like February up to when you were made redundant there in July, and then when you pivoted to sort of full time on Founders Al. When you were starting that on the side, what were the options that you sort of saw as open to you? What were you trying? You said there that you tried a SaaS, but it didn't really work out. So what was going through your mind as you sort of made this switch from working for a big company to working for yourself?
Yeah, I suppose to answer that, it's helpful to look at the 6 or 7 months prior to the redundancy. So when I first started it in like literally last January, probably a year today nearly. So
Mhm.
you're on my anniversary. It was a case of I need to do something, and I tried to learn coding in work. I just couldn't be bothered to learn that at the age of nearly 30. So I was like, okay, um, maybe I could sell my skills. And the one thing that, I've always learned about and looked at is like ideal client profiles. So it's like, okay, I'm going to just basically offer it for free, but at $7, like just to see if someone would actually pay for me to find their ideal client. One slide, that's it. And they did. And it kind of built up over there. And I suppose I got to a point when it was April to July when I couldn't scale the thing. I couldn't grow it. And what was going through my mind was I just felt trapped. Anxiety at not being able to pursue what this is now, like my business, the thing that actually gives me life. And I was debating, do I quit? What do I do? I don't know what to do. I was quite risk averse, and luckily they kind of done it for me, which was nice. And then, yeah, I suppose the mindset after from July was relief and anticipation, a lot of nervousness. And I still get a lot of anxiety now, especially when things go well, because I feel like, well, what's going to go wrong? And that's just my mindset.
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of the little journey.
Yeah, and in terms of the SaaS ideas you had, what were those? Or if you don't wanna talk about them, what did you learn at least from trying them and not having them work out?
Yeah, so I've always loved writing. Like I write a couple newsletters, Substack and on Beehive. So I've always loved it. I've always been good at it, in my opinion. Sounds egotistical, but it's one of my strengths. Whereas I feel like when I speak, it's probably I don't come across that clear. So I thought, okay, on these newsletter sites like Beehive, or Beehive wasn't as big at the time like Substack, it's really hard to find people to like partner with to write an article together. And that's one of the best ways to grow a newsletter. So I was like, I'm going to build a platform that connects writers together. And um, I tried to learn coding. It was kind of just before maybe I knew all about Cursor and AI and stuff that could do it for me. And yeah, it just kind of flunked, but I learned how to learn new things in a better way because then I think I was probably too, my ego was too big to like reach out to others and ask for help. I was just like, I need to do this on my own, watch YouTube videos. But now I'm trying to just remove all of my biases. Like even with the business stuff that I know really well, there's a shitload that I don't know well. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from it.
Right on. And before we move on, you said that you learned a lot during your time at HSBC and the second company there. What specific things prepared you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I worked in a variety of roles, like um, frontline kind of account management, bit of sales, bit of middle office, like back office, basically running like these massive organizational wide change programs, like, to digitize things or to restructure the organization. So I think the thing that I kind of learned there was project management or program management is absolutely critical, especially in the founder world when maybe some people are kind of going on the fly or a little bit freestyle, and that's great. Like I love doing that as well, but an element of structure and organization and knowing when to pivot and when to stop. And then I also think there is obviously the sales side of it. Like by representing business cases to like internal executives and getting budget approved. And it's, internal sales as well as external sales to clients. Like all of those things have just been, an amazing foundation. But that's not to say this year, even just by talking to people and having new clients and running my own thing, like I've learned even more things like how to be more scrappy, how to not seek permission as much because you don't need to when you do this on your own. So
Was there a bit of like a culture shock moving from sort of sales in that corporate setting into what you're doing now, which is basically meeting people through X that are much smaller and much less formal, obviously?
yeah, I think it goes back to the permission seeking. Like in organizations, there's always approvals, there's always things, there's always checks and stuff you have to do, which you do in some aspects of this, right? But it's a lot faster, which I like. And, I didn't even know at the time, social media could be a way to generate leads. And I guess that has been less of a shock and more of a pleasant surprise, especially for my own business and for people that I help as well.
Yeah. And in terms of lead generation, there are a lot of companies that do this for other companies and a lot of consultants that do this. What gave you the confidence that you could get into this market and make your own success here?
For me, it comes down to like personalization, quality of leads, but also the before and the after. Like I'm not just saying, who do you want as your customer? I'm helping them. Some cases they don't know who their customer is, so we need to figure it out first. Some cases they do, but there needs to be a bit of deeper thinking into the offer because the offer's not good enough. There's no point generating leads if they're not going to be interested in the offer. So there's those kind of foundational aspects that I combine with the lead gen. As far as it comes to actual lead gen, like generating leads, I think everyone's sick of AI replies and AI outreach to a certain extent. So my whole thing is at this point, I am not like it's all human, right? I'll use tools to help generate stuff, but I go deep and small to a targeted list rather than massive and to everyone. It's a shotgun approach. And I suppose it really does depend on the client, but I always help progress those to, a sales call or even jump on the sales calls as well. So it's those kind of elements that I wanted to focus on. And I only really realized all of that in around September, October last year when I kind of rebranded. So
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned earlier on was that really low fee that you started out with. I wanted to come back to that. So you were charging like what, $7 a pop to create an ICP for folks. Uh, Obviously, that's one strategy we've seen. People offer really low fees just to get the ball rolling in terms of new clients, get their name out there. What did you learn specifically from that, and how did it help you move towards what you're doing now with your offer?
yeah, I learnt that it is an effective tactic for one, and I can repeat that for future offers. I actually took the inspiration from Nick Buzz, who runs everyone probably knows, right? The Bait Design Agency, where they did like, I think some free, they do the free design roasts and all that. So I thought, okay, it seems to work for design agencies. So I'm going to try it for me. What did I learn? Um, I mean, I don't have much more to say other than it's a tested and successful method for me, and I'd happily do it again. And I am to a certain extent with this Reddit thing, but I think because I've probably built up a bit more credibility, I don't have to start at $7 anymore. I can actually start, much higher. So
Yeah. And you mentioned feeling quite anxious ahead of being made redundant there in July. I guess when you were starting to grow, because in that thread you outlined sort of revenue numbers and they kept moving in the right direction. So, what were some of the key moments or signals that gave you motivation to keep going, let you know that you were on the right track?
yeah, from July or
I mean,
overall,
were there any that seems like a logical turning point for in the story. So,
I think there's a one actually before. So I mentioned the $7 projects. They were one-offs. Like, they took me a day to do, and they were like one-off things. I wanted to move away from that because it's not sustainable. I wanted a repeat subscription, again, like design subscriptions for founders that wanted business consulting help to build a sales strategy and sell to their clients. So I launched that in last March for $300, and I got my first client. So that was a huge validation. And then raising the price to 800, another client, again, another validation. And then it got to, as I said, post redundancy, hadn't had any leads for a while, and I was worrying. And then I got a new client on the last price point, which was, again, another big validation, and then another one. So for me, the turning points were the motivational points when people actually bought the thing. And then, of course, the biggest kind of motivation recently has been two things. So I repositioned everything I did as fractional head of growth for founders that have been overly reliant on word of mouth referrals. And that's been much clearer, and has been helping me have more convos with folks. And the second thing is, of course, this whole Reddit deal, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So.
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute. I want to pause just quickly on the subscription service thing, because that is a hot topic. We're doing it in Clipwing. I guess, what was your thinking there besides just wanting recurring revenue? Were there any other monetization models that you looked at, like just a flat hourly rate or a weekly rate or something? How did you end up with monthly subscription for it?
Yeah, again, it all links back to seeing people like Nick for Baked Design, and there was another design founder that had started doing it. It was getting great traction. For me, the whole hourly kind of, having to work that out and keep track of that, like, for me, that's just admin I didn't want. I would rather be able to say to someone, I delivered this on an ongoing basis, and you get this at the end of each month. This is how much it costs. And if they do not prefer to work that way, then we're probably not a good fit. So it's kind of a way for me to filter out people that would prefer to look at hours and stuff like that, because I'm not really about that. It's more, I deliver you the value, and this is how much it costs, and it's simple.
If you don't mind sharing, can you share how you quantify that value? Is that like a number of closed leads, a number of warm leads? Like, is it on a case by case basis with each client? How do you figure that out?
It is kind of tailored to each client, but typically we'll agree, at the start, what does an excellent result look like to you after we've done discovery? Like, in the first 4 weeks, the first 8 weeks, what does an excellent result look like to you from new clients acquired, or upselling, or retention, or churn? Like, what would be desirable? And that kind of feeds into that. Obviously, typically I want them to get a massive return on investment out of working with me, right? So we'll always kind of fine tune that. Typically it is always, I want it, let's win X number of clients. I always make it really clear that first comes discovery. I need to actually understand your business first. I need to make sure, that sometimes they want to look at their offer. So it's not always about just winning new clients. That is the end goal. But sometimes people are seeking clarity, and that in itself has a intangible value versus, a new Stripe notification, which everyone loves. But, I've worked with someone recently, still work with him. And the thing that he wanted and prioritized was clarity on what his growth plan should be, and how to get there, and what his offer should be.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, with the designs, it's kind of, you have a tangible delivery, and with this, it can be um, quite varied depending on the client. So, one last thing before we get to Reddit, one quote I found in your X thread was, quote, niching down early worked and it didn't work. So, what was your experience there? What did you learn from trying to niche down?
Going right back to the start, I was kind of taking on anyone, any work, any business, SaaS, agency, because I'd intentionally done that, so that I would find my niche and think, okay, what needs can I solve? What do people commonly suffer with? Which was good. So I was then able to kind of niched down some of my services to those needs. As far as the bit that didn't work, it was the industry. And I tried to be way too focused on one specific type of company, and that was outsourcing companies or outstaffing.
Mhm.
The thing is, it's the industry that I probably didn't have that much experience on, but I decided to go after it because I'd spoken to a few people and their problems seemed to resonate. Didn't didn't work in the sense that the content I was producing was getting engaged by those people, but it was just too. I was cheating myself out of potential clients because I wasn't expanding my scope. So I was like that, and then went like that, and then afterwards, I decided again when I rebranded as Fractional Head of Growth for founders. I spoke to like 10 to 15 different founders and basically just heard the same problem. Regardless of their industry, the problem was that they were too reliant on one sales method like SEO or referrals, and they wanted to expand that. So that's when I kind of come up with the idea of being their head of growth. They've got spending power, but they don't have anyone that can build and run their sales strategy.
All right, let's get into Reddit and what you've been doing lately. As I mentioned, you've been sharing these amazing spreadsheet lists of leads with founders on X. So, when did you get this idea? Where did you get this idea? And I guess, how is this lead gen strategy on Reddit working for your clients?
So I got the idea again like a year ago. I'm going to keep referring back to it, but all these design roasts that did really well, I loved them, even
Mhm.
though it's completely outside of my industry. It's like, how do I replicate that for the thing that I do? I help companies grow with a fractional head of growth offer. I've tried to do similar things before, just sharing a process or, before and after stuff, but nothing really kind of hit as specifically and as kind of strong as this. So it was actually only 11 days ago now, maybe 12. And I thought, well, I'd recently just done a basically one of those lead lists for someone kind of privately. Like I just wanted to test it. So I sent it to him. I said, do these look like good leads to you? And they were like, yeah. So I thought, well, I'm now gonna try and do this for someone on Twitter that I've talked to, someone in the community that I know is friendly and would potentially appreciate it, just to see how it lands. And I did with Lyra for Clipwing and the video stuff. And I suppose the reaction to that kind of really motivated me to just keep going, do one every day. Like I'm going to do another one today. Then I've been able to, so for my like live clients, just do that for them because that's what I'm doing as part of our work anyway. And then I've been able to onboard a new client to this offer and, only started on Monday. So it's all very recent, but it's good. It's like in the matrix, you're talking to people that have immediately got a pain and, it's much more, the feedback loop is much faster.
For sure. And just about Reddit in general, have you been like a long time user of the platform? What's unique about sort of the user base there that makes it a good place to do this?
I've had my personal account for a long time. I've probably like 10 years, maybe more. What do I think about Reddit? I think Reddit is possibly, maybe it's changing now, but maybe one of the most slept on marketing channels for like even bigger brands, but also founders and pretty much any business. I think it's going to be in the next, I know we're doing predictions later, but I feel like it will be like the new frontier of marketing because people are honest, people will tear you down, people will see through bullshit, and people will also post very recent, very painful things that they need help with. So it's basically just a massive place to validate your idea, to research, to sell, but also help others and build a community. So that's why that's what I think about Reddit. And what is it like there in terms of lead gen? You can set up alerts, you can search for anything and find certain really niche subreddits, and people will experience pain that you can help with, and it will be real time. It won't be like having to look in the past, a week ago, you can do it today. And I suppose the thing that I really like about Reddit in terms of like lead gen is the honesty and the transparency. Twitter's great, and there is an element of that honesty and transparency, absolutely. LinkedIn is, in my opinion, surface level and sugar coated. Reddit is like ultra transparent. So
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I really appreciate the separated niche, the forum-esque, communities that are there, and I guess this is a sort of a side tangent, but communities are a feature also on X, on Twitter, and I'm curious, why do you think that that hasn't sort of taken hold? Because there are a few that I'm part of, they're not very popular, like, people almost always post in their main feed on Twitter. So, just as an aside, do you have any idea why communities work on Reddit, but they don't work on other platforms as well?
yeah, it's a good question. I think on Twitter especially, you see a lot of like there is a lot of self promotion, and maybe the rules aren't enforced as much. Maybe that could be a factor. I might be wrong. Whereas on Reddit, the rules are very strictly enforced, and people kind of have a good red etiquette. They abide by them or they get banned, and they know that. And for someone to get banned in a for subreddit or Reddit, it could be really negative for them because it might be people they like talking to. It could be a community that they get support from. It could be essential to their business. So there is self-promotion on Reddit, absolutely, but they usually get really low engagement and or they get removed or deleted quite quickly. So maybe that's one aspect. The other is Reddit in itself, the whole community or forums thing has been around for a long, long, long time. Whereas I'm not sure when communities on X or Twitter were introduced
Yeah,
and
wasn't that long ago, I don't
wasn't
think.
that long ago.
Yeah.
It's probably quite relatively recent, whereas Reddit's very mature in that sense too. So
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been posting there off and on at a few different roles in companies as sort of a marketer trying to harness this Reddit marketing magic that everyone's talking about. But the main blocker I see is this rules. Like if you have to be quite obscure about what you're offering, and as a result of that, like as a marketer, sort of going in and dropping helpful comments all day is pretty low conversion, honestly. Maybe you have some advice here to increase the conversion rate from that. So what are your thoughts there? Like, what do you give people in terms of strategy when they say, "Look, I can waste 4 hours a day chatting on Reddit, but I don't actually get leads from it."
yeah. So we'll start from the very top. So like you would do with anything prospecting, um, not going for absolutely every single post that you can help with just because you can. Going for ones that are ideally within a week, even better if it's in 3 days, or even better if it's today. So the reason behind that is, they're probably active and not many other people have already helped per se, so you can stand out. That's number one. Finding actual posts that indicate that the person has a really pressing problem that you can help with. Now, these come in two ways. It could just be a question about how do I diversify my sales? Or sometimes people are quite direct and they're like, I need to outsource something, or I need help with setting up, this video production. Who's a good, podcast host and stuff like that. So there are like a mix between advice questions, but also solution requests. With those solution requests, you can of course be more direct. Now, as far as then kind of progressing that, as you say, you can help and help, but sometimes it doesn't lead. So I always try after I've commented like something with insane value. As I say, I do it on the posts that are priority. Follow up with a DM. It kind of just leads it naturally on. It's like, I helped you. If they respond positively, I can follow up and say, happy to walk you through my process, have a normal conversation, explore a bit more. And then you could say, let's jump on a call. Let's talk it through. And then you're introduced to them. For example, in the summer last year, I was trying to get partnerships for a client of mine who had a software dev agency. He wanted to partner with design agencies. So I saw some posts, talking about a design agency in, North America, and kind of just commented, followed up with DMs and said, look, I got a client, would love to partner, let's talk. And we jumped on a call. So there are like ways to do it. I think the workflow for me is quality posts, help, um, follow up in DMs. And then I suppose it depends on is what you're selling, but as long as you've got your link in your bio, they might get curious, or you can kind of help them so much that you could subtly ask or say, by the way, we do this. If you know anyone that could benefit from this, would appreciate any introductions. And if they can, then they'll ask themselves.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of the bio, this is something that I've noticed as well. Like the path on Twitter is so much faster. Like you see somebody with a tweet that gets some traction, like you post one of these Reddit lists. Immediately, I click on your profile, I find out who's Jordan. But that path seems a lot more rarely taken on Reddit. Is there any way to like see? Are there any Reddit analytics that show like link clicks out of bios, or is there any way to track that?
Not too sure, actually. It's probably something that I should investigate. But two thoughts on that. Obviously, the whole thing about Reddit is like obscurity and anonymous accounts, right? But you do kind of have exceptions. So, for example, Paul Shui, his second name is spelled XUE. He's 500K agency owner. I believe he has his picture on Reddit, and his name is not too dissimilar to his name on Twitter. So it's a bit more clear about who he is and what he does, and he's a very good poster on Reddit. And I'll talk about that in a second. The second is I think John Rush also has a picture. Don't know if it's his the name John, but there are cases, and you can kind of add something that makes you more visible in a way, therefore potentially increasing, conversion rates. But I suppose it's getting them there. And the thing that I would say that goes in hand with outbound and outreach to people that need your help on Reddit is inbound. So again, I'll go back to Paul. He's the master at doing a post on a forum like subreddit entrepreneur or small business that is kind of slightly controversial, has a good, like a number in it, a revenue number or a number of clients, posting it in the forum and getting a ton of inbound leads. So you can come at it from two ways, and obviously together they're quite powerful. You can do the outreach daily, and then you can do these posts that are like, mega, they make you curious, and you might get some hate, but you might also get a ton of leads. And that's what he did for his agency last year.
Yeah, Paul's a great guy. He was actually on the show last summer, I believe. Yeah,
Nice.
we talked about global hiring and tech in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Paul's posts, because I wanted to ask more questions about posting instead of just replying on Reddit. So, first one I had was, I guess, what are some keys to like a great post title, and what are some must-haves sort of in the body if you're going to go on Reddit and write a long post that you want to do well?
Yeah, so I would love to, after this, if you include one of Paul's, he's got a guide on this, like specifically about this, because he knows a lot more about, the posting side than me, because he's done it to great success. Myself, what I've done, so for example, I done one last year in Entrepreneur and done a post that said 50 things that I learned from conversations with 40 plus founders I've worked with this year. And that done pretty well. Like, it got a lot of traction because it's numbers, right? It's like a listicle. I look at that and I know exactly what it's going to say, but I'm a bit curious as to what it is that these 40 founders said. So there's that kind of, I think numbers always pop no matter what,
Hmm.
but also not telling everything, a bit of mystery, a bit of curiosity to kind of make someone think, oh, I would like to read that, and I might disagree with something from it as well. Whereas in another post that I did for a client, it was for his SaaS that he had just launched. And I just very plainly put it in a certain subreddit. I think it was Entrepreneur Again. and just basically said, no, it was a side project. And I said, what the site does. I just said a website that monetizes your unused website domains. That did well. It got some hate, but it also got him a ton of new users. And the reason why I think that's the case is because I don't know about you, but I've got domains that I don't use, like website names that are just sitting there. I get renewal fees. Why not make some money out of them? Again, it's curious. It's like, well, is that possible? I want to give my opinion on this. So, those two things as well. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah, and I wanted to ask, I guess I looked at some of Paul's, tweets about this and looked at some of his posts in Reddit, and it's fairly easy to say, well, if you've made, X amount of revenue as he has, he usually puts that in the post title. But if you're starting out and your revenue is not so respectable, let's say, or non-existent, like what other sort of numbers can you put in there to get people interested?
I would say, just in terms of the format first, stories, lean on stories from your life. So for me, I'm going to do one very soon on my transition from corporate to this. And in terms of numbers, you could say something like, you know, 12 months of, or no, 7 months I was working a 9 to 5 and this, or 6 months since and I've been solo and I've earned this amount. You can kind of play around with it. You could put months in there. You don't always have to have a number. It could just be something like, you know, um, solo founders that are trapped in a corporate setting don't realize, the potential they have. That's kind of like a bit provocative and people might disagree with it. So I personally, for someone that is maybe just starting or hasn't explored Reddit at all and maybe doesn't have growth numbers to lean on because they've just started their own thing, I would think about stories. I would think about their own opinions. I would think about the last 6 months and what's happened in those months.
For sure. Let's talk about tools that you use to make these lists or to monitor Reddit real quick. I've set up some alerts with F5bot, which is a free tool. Just drops emails me links of Reddit threads or posts about certain keywords that I monitor through that. What do you like to use? And do you have any suggestions for people that want to monitor Reddit for certain keywords in their niche?
Yeah, so there is a few tools. I personally use Gummy Search.
Hmm.
It's the lifeblood of prospecting for me. It is super useful. I think it's relatively cheap. Pay $29 or $39 a month, and it allows you to group together like related forums. So entrepreneur, side projects, SaaS, for example, and you could call that, founders or tech startups. And then you can go in and do like the keyword search. You can look at advice requests, solutions, pains that people are feeling, but you can also just search by keywords that are relevant to your business as well. So like you could put in find client and it will bring up the last 100 posts that have been about finding clients. Then you can export it and that's where I kind of do my magic. But Gummy Search for me it's kind of the first Reddit tool I use, and I don't need to change and I love it. It's great.
And aside from Reddit, your website outlines some other communities or channels that you like to target, Slack, Discords, things like that. So, what are other strategies you use with clients, or are you gonna sort of get away from that and go all in on Reddit at this point?
I'm still doing the full thing, like the full fractional head of growth service. But I think Reddit, just specifically Reddit as a channel, needs to be its own thing. So I don't know what's going to happen with either business, but I'm fine with it at the moment. I think I'm just going to go off vibes for a bit. But for Slack's really interesting because although it doesn't have, you can't do, it's not the same like format as Reddit or Twitter even. There are certain Slack channels which you can join as a community, and there's like thousands of people, and there's just tons of people, in the intro channel with their LinkedIn profile, which you can just connect with. Or again, it's the same principle. People tend to ask quite targeted questions in there, like, can someone help me with this? Or, how do I do cold emails better? And the way that I do that is, again, always reply publicly with like, and empathize. It's also like, this is a challenge I've experienced that's similar. these are the steps that I took to take it, and be really specific. And then just say, happy to DM if you want to chat more. And, you go to DMs, you talk on a cow.com link, you may just be a new connection, could be a new client, they could refer you to other people. So it's the same principle of helping first, value first, but it's just slightly different. Again, same goes for Discord. There's a couple of good forums for it. One's called Furlough Forum, and then another one's called Loco, LOQOL, Loco, which are pretty good. They've got a lot of founders in as well.
Cool. And let's talk about the future. And of course, with the future comes AI. So, what tools do you use now to sort of make your process more efficient in terms of AI tools? And are there any that you're like trying out, testing out, waiting for?
Yeah. So what do I use when it comes to AI? So there's a really useful function or add-on you can get in Google Sheets. So when I export, lead lists and stuff like that into Google Sheets, sometimes there's quite a lot. The first step is always just removing anything that isn't priority or doesn't fit to someone's business, because it gets it down to like 50, and that's something I can manually check as well. Gemini, there's a Gemini for Sheets kind of extension. I think it's like $9 a month. Super useful at classifying what the post is about, but you have to kind of give it options to classify it too. That saves me a lot of time having to manually go through and think of those things, because it kind of does it for me. But I do give it a good sense check, because my whole thing is around, it needs to be quality leads, and we need to be personalized to them. So I never want anything to be inaccurate. So I literally go through line by line, change things. But then that's just like the top level. Then when it comes to what it is their actual need is, I tend to just go through, like literally at this point, I'm going through manually to do it, because I want it to be 100% correct. As far as the future, absolutely there needs to be a point where that's more automated. And then the fact that I'm doing it manually means that in the future I'll be able to, automate parts or all of it more accurately, because then I know all the nuances and the obstacles and the things that it needs to do. So it's a blend of like initial kind of scan or classification of each post with AI. Like, is it about leads? Is it about sales? Whatever. But at this point, I kind of view AI as a bit of an eager intern. It does a lot of the product like admin job, but it doesn't get everything right. And I, always check. So
Right on. All right. You're about 1 year, as you said, into your journey with Founders Al. What does success look like for 2025 and year two?
haha. Question back. Are you talking where my business is at financially, or?
How you define success? Yeah, I mean, what are your expectations? What are your goals, hopes, dreams?
Yeah, so I guess my long term vision in like years is, I want to, this is going to sound a bit weird. I want to, first of all, I want to leave and move somewhere else. I've got my own place, but I want to move with my girlfriend. So that's number one. The second part is, we want to get, we want to get a farm with goats in. So we want to get a goat farm. We both love goats. I don't know why, but it's like one of these things. It's like, that would be super nice to have a farm with goats in one day, along with all the other things. But that to me just feels like a nice material thing to have. So to be able to achieve that, but also just to live a life where I can go to Australia for a month, or I can go away with my girlfriend for a month and not have to worry about, am I going to scale this thing or am I going to make it? It'll be, on autopilot. I'll be doing the work overseas, to be able to travel anywhere I want at any point and have a team to do that as well with me. That would be great. I think like more immediate term this year, I want to scale the business to, by the end of the year, between, let's just say a wide range, 20 to 40K MRR. I don't think that's out of it's possible. And that will obviously be a great setup for next year. And I guess like for me, it's just working with cool people. I love working with cool people who move fast, who get it, who are open to, trying new things. So
The GOAT goal is awesome. It makes sense. I grew up on a farm, so I always have that sort of drive to return to a bigger piece of land. I'm not so excited about goats, but everybody has their favorite farm animal. Is that something that you would like look at trying to find a place in the UK to do that? Are you looking like somewhere sunny like Spain or Italy? Or,
yet to be confirmed, John.
yeah,
I would be open to anything. I think it's more of like a let's do this one day in a few years. Maybe it could be Spain. Maybe it could be in the UK. I'm not sure.
right on. It's awesome goal. Good luck getting there. Let's see. Is there anything that you are learning or planning to learn this year to specifically grow to those revenue goals that you have?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a point in time where I need to build out a team, or at least hire some people to, yeah, help out with more demand. Um, I think learning that side of things, and I've already talked to Paul because he's, done that to a certain extent, and other people that I know that have kind of built out that. Whilst I worked in teams and also had teams in like my previous life, this is different. This is a solo business that might scale up to 2 or 3 people, or maybe more, or maybe less. But I think that side of things will be something I want to learn about more in the next like 6 months.
All right. And do you see any downsides to starting your own company after this year?
Or yes, mainly around myself, like not like when you're too, like you've probably experienced it, John, like being so in execution mode, you don't really have time to think about the bigger picture. That's one thing. I would also say, like, initially, when I first started going full time, it was like a lack of structure. Like, as much as I loathed the 9 to 5 life at that point, it did give a certain amount of structure in the day, and it's something you have to build by yourself. And I think those two things have been a challenge, but not so much now.
Hmm. And I guess if you have any time to expand on that, how did you build out your workday? What works for you in terms of productivity? Do you have any tips there for folks who are thinking about this?
Yeah, so I go through phases. Like right now, it is as simple as writing the top 3 things I want to achieve this week, and then what do I need to do each day to do these things. On pen and paper, I don't use any to do apps. I don't use. I like it on pen and paper. And then the thing that I like to do is time boxing. Probably heard of it, right? Is an hour dedicated to outreach, an hour dedicated to client work. That kind of works with me better than anything else, like nothing fancy. It's just very basic. And it's just a case of, I think without that North Star, like, what is my offer? Where do I want to go? Okay, goat farm. I've got that as a North Star now. So financially and business wise, I need to work with X number of people this year. And then what do I need to do on a monthly basis to do that, and daily? So it does filter down. So I think the first thing that I would do if I was a new founder or someone that felt a bit lost and struggling with structure in the day is like, okay, what am I actually working towards in a year? And then plan back from that.
All right. And my last question was basically that advice. But if you have anything to add, what advice would you give to Jordan from 1 year ago at this point?
Don't quit because you're going to get made redundant is the number one, because otherwise, you wouldn't get any money. But I suppose the advice would be, if that wasn't the case, if there was that no threat of that, it would be, if you don't like have runway, like savings, 8 to 10 months, maybe for me. And if you know that there's no chance of redundancy, just quit when you're at 9 or 10 months savings. Because I know, I'm talking to him now, because I know you'll long it out. I know you will keep putting it off and you'll never go full time. But trust me, it's good. That's what I'd say.
Cool, cool. All right. You mentioned that you have a newsletter. I already mentioned your X handle. I'll put links to both of those. Are there any other places that folks should follow you online if they are keen to learn more about lead gen?
No, I think the X handle and the newsletter are both completely fine.
Did you tease a YouTube idea or was that someone else? Yeah?
It was me. I'm gonna potentially in the next few weeks try and do like a little mini series on YouTube, basically breaking down exactly how I generate leads via Reddit. How do I know what a good lead looks like and how to outreach? I just need to do it. It's one of those things. It's like, I don't want to promise something and not do it, but I'm going to try and do it probably end of this month, first video. So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, look forward to seeing that and sharing it with everyone. All right, Jordan, anything else you would like to leave our audience at Ship It and Sip It with before we sign off?
I think I'm all good.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming in the show. And have a great week. Have a great weekend. Ship it and sip it, everybody.
Cheers, John.